Just to get everything started, so my name is Kohei Iguchi, and I'm a qualified naturopath and medical herbalist. So thanks everybody for joining in today. Despite this really nice weather we're having today in New Zealand, we haven't had this for I don't know, maybe it's been about 4 or 5 days, I think. So you might be inside watching this webinar, but so thank you for joining in. I've been just a little bit about myself. It's not about me today, but just a little bit about myself. I've been practicing as a qualified naturopath and medical herbalist for about 6 years. And my experience with some of the topic that we'll be talking about, which is about things like allergies. I was head to toe covered in eczema back in 2010 to a point where I was bedridden for about 4 months. And I was seeing my doctors and specialists, and it just wasn't getting better. Things were getting worse, being on medication and steroid creams and things like that. I went and saw a naturopath, and it took me about a year, but it got me to this point where I'm about 99.9% eczema free. And that's all thanks to the natural therapy that I put into place around that time. And it was the best thing that I ever did. Now I don't have to worry about my eczema. So I've been seeing patients that got me started on a journey to study naturopathy, and now I've been practicing for about 6 years. And what I realized that is that my patients were coming in already feeling sick. And for me, naturopathic medicine is about preventative medicine. So it's not great that patients are coming in sick. So what I wanted to do was reach out to the community and just sort of provide more information for people. And this is what this webinar is all about, is for me to interview other practitioners in the community and get the information out there, get the help that you need before it gets to a point where it's so bad that it ruins the quality of your life. So yeah, we're putting this webinars together, and so for the first episode, we've got Sharon Selby. Thank you so much for joining us today. And so she's a health coach in Australia, specializing in allergy-friendly living. And we met recently, and we found out that we shared a lot of common sort of values around treating allergy issues. And so I just wanted to introduce you guys to Sharon today, and I'll just let her introduce herself, I suppose, and yeah, just get into the whole webinar. So yeah, tell us about yourself, Sharon.
Brilliant. Well, thank you. And yeah, your story really resonates with me. And so when it was actually one of the mums on my e-course, Raising Kids with Allergies, that said, you really should meet Kohei. And I think the beauty about you and why we wanted to suddenly start working together is when you can find a practitioner such as yourself that wants to address the root cause, but has been there too, is really amazing, because conditions like eczema, allergies, hay fever, they're very debilitating, and they do, really affect your quality of life. So to have a practitioner that has been there and recovered, that level of passion for healing, you just can't surpass that. So that's why I was so thrilled to meet you. Because of course there's a lot of people, people like me who aren't, actual practitioners, that when we do go and see a doctor, they don't always relate, and they don't really understand, when they give us some advice, how that advice affects us. So I work a lot with parents that just had babies, or toddlers, or older children. And then, the practitioner might not always be very sympathetic and say, what, dairy and gluten has nothing to do with your symptoms. Go and give, dairy, go and give formula. But the mother has to deal with the consequences, and so often doesn't listen to their intuition or their mother's instinct. And they will follow the advice of the professional who has not been there or done that. So that's why I'm so thrilled to be here. And I thank you, and I'm so humbled. And I can't wait to see more of your webinar series and who you're going to be bringing on, because there's definitely a wave of practitioners and people like me, and I call myself rather ordinary, but in the sense that I'm not a celebrity, I haven't got lists of qualifications, but it's ordinary people like me that are getting extraordinary results. And that's what's making an impact in the world now. It's not necessarily science, because, you know, who is backing up the science? Is it a pharmaceutical company? Or, you know, anything like that? Science is okay, and is very helpful in places, but what's really making an impact now is evidence, and people actually healing and photographing their evidence and sharing their stories. This is having a major impact, and people are listening. So yeah, I'm thrilled to be here. So your question, I think, is how, you know, to introduce myself, is I never expected to have this business in my life. I have never been interested in food. I've never really been ill. I've, you know, unlike you. And really, I think the universe has a way of making you listen and maybe change course. So it's the business that I never expected to have. So by qualification, I'm a health coach, and I really specialize in food allergies and atopic conditions like hay fever, eczema, psoriasis, and things like that. So like you, my husband suffered from head to toe eczema and psoriasis all over his body for 5 years. And this is when we just became parents. There was a real inconvenience because his health and my health deteriorated rapidly when we became parents. I think it was probably the final straw on the camel's back that, you know, when your load is too full, suddenly things fall apart. So we felt fine before, but I think lack of sleep, stress, we moved country, it took its toll. So it was all accidental, but some life coach that I spoke to said, you know, I think it was the journey you were always meant to have. So sometimes in crisis, we actually begin to bloom and grow. And now my passion is my purpose, to serve others and to share how you can really be empowered and make a massive difference to your own health and to your kids' health and to your family's health, and to prevent sickness. So I began being a health coach a few years ago, and I was really working with mums because I had gone through major health crisis and conditions. So when I gave birth to my eldest son, I developed suddenly very severe asthma and year-round hay fever, to the point where I was also bedridden. You know, I get blocked nose, itchy throat, terrible eyes. I was sneezing all the time, and you know, it was hard to tell whether I had a cold or flu or whether it was hay fever. And it didn't matter where I was or what time of year, I was suffering. And long story short, saw the GP, saw a respiratory health specialist. I ended up getting pneumonia twice because my conditions weren't being managed, and I had no idea what was going on. And in short, the treatment I had was 8 rounds of steroids a day to manage these conditions. And initially it was great. I never felt good about taking so much medication, but the hay fever stopped. I could breathe without having an asthma attack. But then over a while, as often happens with medication, you're fixing one symptom, but often at a cost for something else. So I was getting a lot of migraines. My immune system was so low. I was constantly catching infections and colds and getting terrible headaches. And I was also starting to get nosebleeds all the time, which was a result from the medication. And then after being on this medication for 2 years, I developed chronic fatigue as well. I had no energy. I was diagnosed with severe depression. And I was raising a young family. So it wasn't great. It wasn't a great start to being a mother. And then I don't know how, one day I just woke up and I thought, enough's enough. And I think what happened was I was also not eating very well because I was constantly tired. I was craving sugars. And I decided one morning in my dressing gown, I'm going to stop eating processed foods, and I'm going to stop eating gluten and dairy and sugar. I'm not really sure why I picked those. I think probably because my diet was heavy in those foods. And I said, I'm just going to do it for 2 weeks. I'm not going to eat these foods, and I'm going to commit to eating 5 fruit and veg a day, ideally 8. And I had no education in food. I never, ever listened to that phrase that you are what you eat. I I thought there was no correlation to that. And then after a couple of weeks, I started feeling really good. My energy levels were good. I was way more positive. And I was diagnosed with severe depression and anxiety. And then, you know, I never got another headache. And I was probably taking about, I'm not exaggerating, a packet of paracetamol or Nurofen a week, on top of everything else, and cold and flu tablets. I didn't get a cold or flu. And then after 3 months, I came off half my medication. And then in 5 months, I came off all the medication and I was symptom free. So I no longer reacted to the environment. I no longer had asthma or hay fever. And that was a total revelation. How did a stay at home, severely depressed mother suddenly heal herself when I had doctors and experts with decades of experience and lists of qualifications? The best thing they could do, and I thank them for it, was to suppress my symptoms. So I was blown away, and that led to me getting very passionate and excited about food and diet and nutrition. So I went and studied nutrition, and it was a health coaching program for a year. And that's how my journey started. And I started helping other mums to achieve those goals of increased energy, positivity, and just being happy. You know, it's very challenging being a parent, Kohei, just you wait. And then my youngest son was born, and I thought, oh, this is going to be great. I'm going to be a happy mother, and I'm going to know exactly what to do nutrition wise. And then he blew my mind, because I was off dairy and I was off gluten. I had a very healthy diet, and suddenly he was born and he developed reflux pretty quickly. He developed eczema, and I was like, whoa, I'm doing everything right. What's going on? And then discovered when I was weaning him, he was reactive to all sorts of food. So he threw up on apples, on bananas, on avocados. He threw up on eggs, couldn't tolerate any dairy whatsoever. So he was allergic to dairy. Gluten, I would just, it was more like an intolerance. It would react to his eczema. So I was really shocked. And what I realized is he had a strong sensitivity to a natural occurring chemical in fruit and vegetables called salicylates. And that's where my journey began in terms of really focusing on allergies and food intolerances and the atopic conditions. Because what I realized from his birth was that actually I was just really intolerant to dairy and gluten. And when I take those foods out, I feel a lot better. I'm less reactive. So that's how I really started to focus on that area of health. And beautifully, and I'm so grateful to the universe and all that kind of stuff. Luckily, I had the knowledge. I'd already had this massive healing transformation for myself, that I had this inner knowing that I was going to sort my son's health out. And I was very much in charge, and I had the confidence, and I felt very empowered to do that. So while he had a very strict diet, I really started to excel in cooking. And I started cooking, you know, broths and slow cooked stews and casseroles with a couple of vegetables and a bit of meat on the bone. And I'd be extracting all sorts of minerals and collagen and all that kind of stuff. And he healed pretty quickly. So by the time he was 18 months old, without having to intervene with any medication, he was eczema free, he was reflux free, and he overcame every single allergy and food intolerance. And my life was so much easier. At the time, it was stressful, because if anyone who's listening is dealing with a food allergy or food intolerances, chances are they are the massive food groups like dairy or gluten. And when you can't suddenly take eating for granted, it's really confronting. And it can seem like an impossible thing to do. Like, how do I live life without these major food groups that I've been relying on? And so that's where I found a space to be really helpful and to serve others, is to make allergy-friendly living very achievable, quite simple and delicious, and really healing and nourishing. And when we do that, hopefully we can become allergy-free and free of all these miserable symptoms that so many of us are dealing with now. So, sorry for that long answer.
No, that's fantastic. I mean, I can definitely agree with you. And you know, I even saw your husband's before and after photo, and it was just amazing. You know, the difference after a short amount of time, that's
Yeah.
amazing. And it just really shows the individuality of the um, each person's intolerances. You know, everybody's made differently. There's so many people that go through different types of diet, and but they sometimes don't see those results because it's not really sort of personalized to them. Each person is different. So I
Yeah.
mean, I think we both approach people, you know, to their uniqueness, and yeah, to their root cause, really. But
Well,
like,
that's it. A
yeah,
root cause is unique, whereas
yeah,
medication as such isn't. You know, if you've got eczema, you know, everyone's on this sort of a similar treatment. Um,
absolutely, yeah.
yeah.
I mean, with, you know, so your main sort of the clients that you see are parents with often kids with
Mm.
asthma, eczema, any sort of allergy issues, right?
Mhm.
And what would you say are some of the things that those parents are doing, probably unknowingly, that they might be doing wrong or could be doing better when they're
Mhm.
managing allergies or intolerances, or like even just some of the common mistakes you might find?
Yeah,
Yeah,
such a great question, and one that I'm really passionate about. And look, no one ever wants to do things wrong. We're all always doing our best. And when we know better, we can do better. And unfortunately, in that journey of knowing better, we can sometimes feel so guilty for the things that we didn't do before. So with my eldest son, who is slightly asthmatic, and I'm still working with him um, to heal him from that. You know, because he actually also had an intolerance to dairy, which I did not know when I was a new mum. So he kept getting these reoccurring ear infections. And as a little baby, he would sort of, you know, try and hit his head against the wall, you know, and I just thought, that's so crazy that he's doing that. Why is he doing that? Kids are always doing things for a reason, you know, but he constantly had these ear infections. I went to an ear, nose, and throat specialist, and each time he was like, you know, I can't see anything going on here. Like, clearly he's uncomfortable. Clearly he's suffering. Let's give him some antibiotics. And so I did that. I didn't know how to prepare his gut for that. I didn't know how to, you know, support his immune system. And, you know, each time I was giving him these antibiotics, his gut was getting infected. And funnily enough, he never had a bacterial infection. It was actually an intolerance to dairy. So it was when I was studying, I was like, oh, dairy is such a problem. So I think on his third round of antibiotics, and I cringe, I took out dairy, and guess what? He never had another ear infection. And he was probably about a year old. He's never had antibiotics since, and his immune system has soared. But so there are lots of mistakes that parents are unwittingly making. Um, and so the first one is, if you're seeing a doctor or a practitioner or whoever, and you're dealing with asthma, eczema, maybe ear infections, behavioral issues, ask why, because they are not normal conditions. They're really common now, but they are not normal. And the body isn't designed to deal with these things. If you look at animals in wildlife, they are not dealing with these things. They're not dealing with ADHD. They're not dealing with hay fever. The only animals that are struggling are our pets. So we have dogs with digestive issues, irritable bowel syndrome. We have cats that have health issues, but actual, you know, wildlife, no problems generally. And humans are built the same way. So we must always ask, why is this going on? And don't assume as a parent that you don't have the answers. What I often see is parents following the advice of a practitioner. They don't quite believe it. So a practitioner, and there are many cases in the group with the mums that I work with, say, for example, a breastfeeding mother, and the baby's reacting to something in her diet, and the doctor might dismiss it and say, no, you know, definitely give that. They need the calcium or whatever. And the mother is dreading it. There's a stress, but she's not listening to it and goes ahead. I think, you know, you must listen to your intuition. Know that there is a lot you can do. And for those who are dealing with allergies and are seeing an immunologist, don't just wait for the next allergy challenge and just hope for the best. Let's hope that he won't react to egg this time in the baked allergy. there is actually so much we can be doing in that time to boost the immune system. You know, and diet, and we can, then maybe you have a question later about what we can do about that. But, you know, we really need to focus on the child's gut health and their diet. And where parents can be going wrong is, for example, if a practitioner says, you know, your child does have a dairy allergy or a dairy intolerance or a wheat or a gluten intolerance, what parents will naturally do is, understandably, is they want to feed their kids. So they'll go and find a gluten-free bread or a dairy-free yogurt. And what happens is those products are so hard to digest, because instead of having the one ingredient like wheat, they're finding a gluten-free bread that might have 50 ingredients sometimes, full of preservatives, full of additives, full of, you know, corn, soy, genetically modified foods, a lot of, you know, pesticides in there, like not really clean products. They're very hard to digest and they are quite toxic on the body. So what we're doing is we can't eat one food, so we're trying to replace it with probably something that's really below average, and we're compromising the nutrients in our children's diet. What other things? Another thing is, often we get clues from the very beginning if our children are going to struggle with any health conditions. If there's problems with breastfeeding, there's generally a reason. It's not like, oh, my baby's a bit strange, doesn't seem to know how to breastfeed, doesn't want to eat. That baby innately knows something is not working for me, so I'm put off. I don't want to do this because it's hurting me. And then we have colic developing, and then that can lead on to reflux. If these conditions don't get resolved and nipped in the bud, we have like an atopic march, an allergy march taking place. These kids are then going to get maybe eczema. And then that's going to lead, when that child's 3 or 4 or 5 years old, asthma. And then we're going to get a fussy eater on our hands. And then we're going to have nutrient deficiencies. And then we're going to have behavioral disorders. It is so common, that march of you know, degenerative diseases and really unpleasant symptoms that make family life really, really stressful and challenging. So if you see the slightest thing, work on it, because if you don't, it can manifest into other things. So, you know, if we've got an eczema child, instead of just putting steroid creams, try and treat the root cause, because eczema, for example, is with a lot of research, because with my husband having eczema and psoriasis, what worked for my son didn't work for him. I had to go to a whole much deeper level for my husband, and it took me years to work out what would help him. But what I learned is that the body is striving to thrive, and we need to help the body do that, because our modern way of living is not consistent to a thriving way of life. It's quite unnatural now. So we need to get to the root cause. And with eczema, for example, that's the body being really clever and getting the toxins as far away as possible from the internal organs. So when parents are worried about eczema on the skin, worry more about what's going on inside, because actually the body is doing a really smart thing of getting the danger away from inside the body and to the least dangerous part, which is the skin. So when my husband was suffering for 5 years, I wasn't worried about the external. I was worried about, how am I not able to fix the internal? So always fix from within. So look what's going on within, because the symptoms are actually wonderful clues that the body is giving to say, look, I need some help. I need some intervention. I need to see someone like Kohei or Sharon or another integrated practitioner that's interested in the root cause. And what another problem that we do is we will naturally go to our GP when things aren't working. And then the GP, you know, might recommend us to their specialist. And then we're actually in the passenger seat. We're not actually driving this. And so other people are having much more of an impact on our health or on our children's health than a parent. And really, there's going to be no one more passionate, more determined, more motivated helping their child than a parent. So it's really important that parents become informed. So if you're dealing with something like this is an opportunity to learn, and you can fix the current situation and also prevent other situations from occurring.
Wow. You know, Sharon, you say you're not a practitioner, but you have quite a deep understanding of how the body works, and I suppose it comes from your experience, your own experience, as well as with your kids and your husband and people that are close to you, you know, and you can really see that coming through your words. You have a very deep understanding of the internal functions of the body, which is fantastic. And I just saw on the chat here, somebody said, the doctor told me my issues wasn't to do with gluten, cut it out anyway, and the issues went away. And so,
yeah, amazing. Well done. Like,
and
well done for listening to yourself.
yeah, and I think it is that intuition that mothers may have, or yourself might have about you, that's very important to listen to, and seek other people who can bring that out for them. So, but in your opinion, do you think things like allergies and atopic conditions are actually reversible?
Yeah, very short answer is yes, absolutely. I think, we may not have a medical solution for these, but I think evidence is the loudest voice right now. And we're seeing a lot of evidence of these conditions being reversed. So in our family alone, we've reversed eczema, asthma, severe depression, anxiety, multiple food allergies, reflux, psoriasis. And it's happening all over the world now. This is one of the wonderful things about social media, is that people are sharing their stories. And I absolutely do believe that these conditions are reversible. And I'll tell you why as well. 50 years ago, IgE-mediated allergies didn't exist. IgE-mediated allergies are the ones that can lead to anaphylaxis, which is fatal. They didn't exist 50 years ago. Now they are very prevalent. You will have 1 in 13 children in a classroom that is anaphylactic. In Australia, at some point, 20% of the population will have a food allergy. We have now food protein induced enterocolitis syndrome, which is FPIES, which is a non-IgE mediated allergy, which really affects the digestive tract. That is massively on the rise. Multiple food allergies are on the rise. We're not just dealing with people who are anaphylactic to nut allergies. They have a whole host of allergies, a list. My son had so many allergies and intolerances. We only worked off a safe list of foods that he could eat for the first year of his life, and then we slowly expanded. And why I share these statistics is what excites me is that it can't be genetic. It can't be that you're just terribly unlucky and you've inherited a really poor gene pool. It suggests that things in our diet, in our lifestyle, are contributing to our genes being triggered. So there's that phrase, you might know it, Kohei, the genes don't pull the trigger, it's your lifestyle, or something like that. Yeah, so your genes don't pull the trigger, it's your lifestyle. So that your lifestyle, your diet will either turn those genes on. You may be predisposed to certain things, but doesn't mean you have to suffer with them. So another interesting thing is, and that's why a lot more people are going to naturopaths like you and integrative practitioners, because you're addressing the root cause, and you're not symptom chasing. So I was symptom chasing when I was chronically ill. I was symptom chasing asthma, hay fever, all sorts of things. But often when you just correct the system which is inside, these symptoms have like a domino effect. They will just start disappearing. And even the medical world can't deny the power of gut health. So there's a professor called Mimi Tang at the Children's Murdoch Research Institute here in Australia. And if you ask her that question, are allergies, atopic conditions reversible? She'll say no. At very best, what we can do now is keep our children safe, carry an EpiPen with you, and avoid and eliminate these foods. But they are looking into how they can have patients on how to minimize these conditions and how to clear them for life. Right now, there's nothing, but they did do a study, and you'll like this if you haven't heard it, Kohei, but peanut allergies have increased over 350% in the last 20 years. This is from this professor. And so she did a study with 60 children, and half of those children she put on a probiotic and also on a peanut protein kind of immunotherapy. So every day they would have a tiny trace of peanut protein with a probiotic. And then with the other half of the kids, they just had a placebo. And then they did this treatment for about a year and a half, and then they tested the kids afterwards, and the results were really, really extreme. So at the end of the trial, the kids were then assessed to see if they could tolerate peanut, and 80% of the kids that had the peanut therapy and the probiotic were able to then tolerate peanut in their diet, which most people, you know, when you've got a peanut allergy, that's a lifelong allergy. And then the other group that had the placebo, only 4% in that group were able to tolerate peanut afterwards. So that basically meant if 9 children were given probiotic and peanut therapy, 7 would benefit. Whereas if they didn't do anything, that was 1%. It was a massive, massive, massive difference. So that's what I say to people is, don't just wait for the next food allergy test or the next food challenge. There is so much that we can be doing. If a probiotic alone can have that massive result, can you imagine, you know, what if you change the diet? What if you reduce chemicals? What if you know, do all these other lifestyle changes? Absolutely, you can reverse. Absolutely. Absolutely. And everyone who does, all the mums who do my course, Raising Kids with Allergies, that is the goal. So I'm, you know, some doctors would be like, don't listen to her. She's not qualified. She's not, you know, got a background in medicine. And I agree, medically, there is no treatment. There's only avoidance. But I really believe in rehabilitating the gut. And with doctors, I say, keep those foods out that are triggering the body. So there's nothing dangerous about what I'm saying. All I'm saying is, let's identify the foods that are causing a problem. Let's eliminate them. And that's what medically we're doing as well. But I go a step further, and let's rehabilitate the gut so that we don't have to live a life of restriction. But ideally, you want to get to a place where you can have gluten once in a while, but you're not going to be overreacting. So I have gluten occasionally, and I have dairy. I love cheese. In fact, my favorite food is pizza. But I love feeling really energetic and thriving. So I don't eat these foods often. But the nice thing is I can once in a while, and I don't react. And that's where I want everyone to get to.
Well, it's about control, isn't it? Being able to bring it back into control so that you have control over these symptoms and this condition that you have. That's what I always, talk to my patients about as well. It's not about, you know, having this and curing everything and it goes away forever. It's about being able to manage it properly so that you have that control over things.
Yes.
Just quick question from Noah and Maya. Did that peanut study have a age range?
Such a good question.
Participants?
Offhand, I can't remember, but what I can do, Kohei, is add a link from that research.
That would be
I
good,
don't think it ever said what the age was, but Mimi, her name's Mimi Tang, and they also have a podcast as well. I think it's called the Allergy Podcast.
Right.
And there's about 10 episodes on there. And it's very informative. And I really like it when medically we're starting to look into gut health, because it's obviously having an impact.
I also saw a comment here from Jamie, and says, you know, some of the things that you were talking about previously about trouble with breastfeeding, reflux, being on medication, being on formula, poor eating and nutrition, those kind of things. You know, it's a problem for a lot of mums. So in your experience, what are some of the sort of like the wins you've had with those mums? And do you have any, now I know that we're about, you know, the uniqueness of each person, but I mean, if you have any sort of practical tips that you can share with us, though, what are some of the things that you can share with us?
In terms of quick wins to see improvements, regardless of what the symptoms are? Yeah, there's definitely some obvious things that we can do. So the first one that I think makes a huge difference, and it doesn't matter if you're allergic or intolerant, I find removing inflammatory foods out of the body has a huge, huge impact. I don't know anyone who can heal properly unless they take out dairy and gluten. And it sounds scary because they are such enormous food groups, but I do find them very inflammatory, and quite highly processed. And I don't mean do it forever, just try it. So I did it when I was chronically ill. I did it for 2 weeks and I felt incredible. And so I love, when I have a client or people on my course, we will try and encourage go dairy and gluten-free. And another tip is just cook more from home, cook from real ingredients, just try and avoid the processed foods, try and minimize those additives and preservatives because they really impact gut health and the bacteria in the gut. Obvious things would be, so, cook, remove inflammatory foods, some basic supplements, but quality supplements and practitioner grade supplements. I always say you just can't go wrong. Is zinc, because we are all pretty much deficient in it. It's not in our soil anymore. And B12. Those are some obvious ones, but if you want to take that and go further, there'll probably be some other nutrient deficiencies, but those are some basic supplements that we will take. Play outside, be outside and get vitamin D. So on my course, we have practitioners on there, and the number one deficiency is vitamin D. So we definitely need to go out and be outside. And in terms of what we can do is with medication, I'm not saying don't touch it. I think some of the stress levels, seeing, children struggling with their skin or whatever, or asthma even, give them the medication, but don't stop there. Use it as a short-term relief, but try and find answers and try and get to that root cause. Another big one for everyone is reduce chemicals. So your cleaning products, your, fragrances in the house, get rid of all of those. They are so highly toxic, the things that you can plug into the sockets. Start getting more natural based cleaning products, skincare, get rid of fragrances, because that's a lot of noise that enters the body, and it's already a lot of noise that an immune system is struggling with anyway. So a lot of people that I work, their children have an immune system that's totally out of whack. So an immune system that is overly reactive to safe things, like to the environment, to dog hair, to cat hair, to food like eggs, which an immune system should know that these are not harmful. But the immune system is totally underreactive and not performing when it comes to fighting off infection. So these kids are often the ones that have gastro, flus, colds or whatever, or reoccurring infections. So you want to balance that out. And toxins and chemicals have a huge part of really causing chaos in the immune system. It's a lot of white noise that the immune system just isn't used to. We're not evolved enough. We haven't been around this chemical explosion. And so our bodies are struggling to cope with it. Another one is to reduce stress if you can. As a parent, we're very stressed about, how, feeding our kids, and they can feel that stress. So you've just got to try and remove that stress and make things more fun. It's very challenging when you're in that moment, but stress is going to be the first thing that puts you off your appetite, that doesn't help you digest well and all that kind of stuff. So bring in laughter and, try and be more relaxed, but it's very hard to say when you're seeing your child struggle. And then just start empowering yourself with knowledge. Follow people like you or whoever, and start learning, because you can take that knowledge with you throughout your life. The knowledge I've used, I've helped my dad with terminal cancer. We extended my dad's life for 2 years, and he got to meet 2 more grandkids. These common things, these quick wins, are what I apply to everyone, and everyone really thrives off it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, speaking of stress, though, you were talking about it just before. I mean, it's a huge factor for most people living in, year 2020, who hasn't got stress, right? But Yeah, I mean, I can see, a lot of moms are under that pressure, especially if they're single moms, trying to, make it
Mm.
through with 3 kids. So, I mean, surely you must have had some clients that are like that, and
Oh,
and for yourself as well. You have kids, so with managing allergies and managing your foods and things like that.
mm, mm.
uh, what are some things that you can do to really help reduce that sort of chaos around it? And just before you answer, I'll just
Yes.
remind everybody, like, if you, because we're getting sort of close to the end of the webinar,
Hmm.
if you have any questions to ask Sharon today, just pop it onto the chat box and we'll do a little bit of a Q&A after this,
Great.
so that we can answer a few other questions. But yeah, like,
Mm.
what are some of the things that you can do to sort of manage things and reduce that stress out of thinking about your food and preparing for things?
Yeah, look, so as a parent, you're so busy. There's a whole bunch of school activities. You may be working, you've got to run the house, and no offense, Kohei, but women are quite good at multitasking. But we take on too much, and it is stressful because all you're thinking about is, oh, I've got to get all of this done. So real key things is, well, so I run a business. I still have my youngest son with me 2 days a week. I develop courses, and I cook. Uh, what's seven? No, 3 times 7. What? No, yeah. So I'm cooking. Basically, what I'm trying to say is I cook every single meal from scratch except for one. Since coronavirus, Friday night is takeaway night. But there's no cereal, there's no sandwiches, um, and I'm cooking all the time. I'm actually no, they're getting home cooked food all the time. So how do I fit it all in? Um, well, first there was a massive shift in priority and passion. When you go through a health transformation of healing your husband or your kids and yourself, you are going to make the time. So other things become less important. Before, I used to spend a lot of time watching TV and numbing my feelings and escaping. And I would just binge watch TV and eat. And I'd never feel happy doing that. So, I watch a lot less TV. And I think everyone has time. The problem is we don't have the energy. Um, Energy is the issue. We all 24 hours in a day is quite a lot of time. And if 9 of those hours are asleep, how much of that time are we on social media, on our phones? But we're lacking energy. It's energy and the brain fog that doesn't allow us to be productive. So when you are feeling healthy and you've prioritized your health, guess what? The first things that you experience are increased energy and a clear head. And when you've got that, everything becomes so much easier to achieve in your day. So your day gets productive, but it's not stressful. It's actually enjoyable. So a lot of kids, a lot of parents, cooking is not their thing, and it's a daily grind of trying to get this food out every day, and then the kids might not eat it, and then a lot of these families are dealing with, I'll cook something for myself and my husband, and then I'll cook something for the allergy child, and I'll cook something different for the fussy eater. There's actually a whole bunch of things that we can do. So priorities have to shift. And I would say the first thing to do for any mum that is not coping well is focus on your own health first. Do those things that I mentioned. Get rid of dairy, get rid of gluten, get some sunshine, do some activity, focus on your health, fill your cup first. It is the most unselfish thing you can do. So how we have in those, I think I heard you once say this on a flight, the flight attendant says, parents, put your oxygen mask on first, then attend to your child. Because unless you are coping well, your family will not cope well. It's all down to, the mum and the parents. So when you feel great, you start achieving a lot more. And then for me, I'm very experienced now in cooking, which is unreal because I never used to cook my whole life. And I was actually proud of that fact because I had a totally different career. And I was like, I'm not a stay-at-home mom. I'm a businesswoman and all that kind of stuff. Now I take a lot of pride and a lot of joy of raising a healthy family and being very present in that. But I've learned how to cook very smart. So I'll do big batches of food. I'll reinvent leftovers. And I've got great recipes. So, if your listeners go to my website, because all my recipes have minimal processes, they're very quick to make. and they taste great for the whole family. So if you are dairy, gluten, egg-free, nut-free, or whatever, cook one meal that will help serve your whole family. So you're not a restaurant, don't cook for everyone separately. And if your kids don't like it, then they don't have to eat it, but there's no other option. You know, and I'll say, I'm not a restaurant. That's what's for dinner tonight. Yeah. And, you know, for those mums who have babies or are weaning, you know, that is a golden opportunity to raise healthy eaters. And what I see often, talking about some mistakes, I see a lot of mums who do a wonderful job of buying these beautiful organic food pouches, like, you know, the apple and cinnamon or a nice pumpkin and lamb. And fine if you want to use it, there's no nutrients there, but just take it out of the packet and put it in a bowl, because the babies and the children start recognizing, oh, ding, 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 I like packets. I like the, you know, what's in that. And then they don't like the real thing that comes from a pot. So never show the packets. My youngest son didn't have a packet food until, you know, he started going to preschool, because I just didn't want to deal with a fussy eater. I wanted a child that was going to thrive on home cooked food and appreciate that and like that. So get rid of the squeezy pouches. And if you are going to use them, put it in a bowl and never let them see the packaging.
See, and this is why I'm going to refer a lot of my patients onto you, because I'm not you know, I have a goddaughter, but I don't have kids of my own yet. And so these little tricks, these little tips that just really helps, especially moms, to get through these situations. It's all the knowledge that you have. So that's why I'm so excited to work with you.
Me too.
Yeah, because I can just go, hey, if you want some of that help, you should really talk to Sharon. So no, it's been really, really educational, even for me today, which is just fantastic.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, I just wanted to thanks so much for your time today. We've sort of come pretty much to the end of the webinar now, but I do have a couple of questions from
yeah, I'm seeing a couple. One from Jess. Do you mind if I just go to the one
go
from
for
Jess?
It.
Jess says, I struggle to cook with such a clingy, cranky baby. We have taken out gluten and dairy, awesome, and have seen improvements, amazing. Spewing has reduced, but there are other issues, sleep, mood, still floating, that need resolving. Yes. So Jess, my youngest son, Cooper, who had all the food allergies, he was as well very clingy. He had separation anxiety. And what I used to do was when I would cook, I would put him in his high chair, and I'd often be cooking meat on the bone. So sometimes I would get cooked meat on cooked a bone, and he would actually chew on that for about half an hour while I would cook, and he'd be trying to suck out the marrow. And so instead of giving him a rubber toy to chew on, he actually had a bone to chew on. That was really good. And so I often cooked like that, or I had him in a carrier, and I would cook with him, carrying him with a carrier. And all I would say is have patience, because unlike medication, which can have almost an immediate reaction, it seems like an immediate resolve, the healing process can take time. And I would say, Jess, there's probably quite a lot more that you can do to speed up recovery and sleep and all of that stuff, because it's all connected, isn't it, Kohei? The sleep, the behavior, the fussy eating, it's all connected.
Everything's connected. Yeah, absolutely.
So hopefully, Jess, some of the ideas about supplements, you know, maybe, you know, you would know about supplements, but magnesium is a great one for relaxation and perhaps sleep, and often children are deprived. And, you know, just really trying to minimize the stress wherever possible, because our kids are annoying like that. They feed off us all the time.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know the half of it, but yeah.
It's really fun, honestly.
One day I'll feel that. Yeah, I've got another question here from Jamie here. Would love to know how to heal the gut without broth, as it can be high in histamine. And they do have histamine issues. So yeah, what are some of the things that you can recommend?
Jamie, yeah, absolutely. So look, broth is not the only thing that helps, but it's just a really nourishing diet. So get rid of those anti-inflammatory get rid of those inflammatory foods out of the diet, like the gluten and the dairy and the processed foods, and really start cooking with whole foods. And that means when we start removing the inflammation, we can start absorbing the nutrients, and that starts feeding all the good bugs, and then that improves our immune system. So don't get hung up on, I'm sure Jamie is one of the mums in my tribe or community, because we're all educated on broth, but there's so many other things. So just a really good quality diet, and only work with what your child can consume. There's just no point adding in things that might trigger them. So we want to get rid of all the triggers and the symptoms, and just really focus on good quality ingredients, and the supplements, and just getting outside and getting vitamin D and things like that. And results will happen, but it can take time. Everyone heals at a different pace. So my son recovered very quick. Well, he was 18 months until when he was symptom free. My husband took me 5 years of solid work, endless practitioners, loads of treatments. Nothing worked. Everyone said, this is something he's going to have to deal with, even naturopaths that we saw in Australia. And we just kept going. And every failure at the time seemed like, oh, nothing's going to work for us. Nothing is working. But there's always a reason that these symptoms are happening. And it's just a case of just being really persistent, and just don't give up on the good work. And my husband, Kohei, you saw the before and after pictures. In 1 month, he healed. And it was just it was the cherry on the top. But it was thankfully, for all the perceived failures beforehand, we were actually healing, but we hadn't seen the results yet. And then it's the final thing. And then suddenly the body's like, got it. And then it just heals and recovers. It's just beautiful. And it's worth the journey. It's worth it, because you learn so much in that process.
Yeah, I always say to my patients, failure is actually good. It leads you on to the next thing to look for. So, and like Sharon said, there's always a reason. So always look for that. And Jamie just commented back here, she is one of mums from your course, and she said
I know, I
she'd be
recognize the name.
lost without
Thanks
your
for showing
course. So
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
so that says it all, hey?
Oh, that's beautiful.
So
Thank you, Jamie.
for those people on here that are not part of your course, like, what would be the best way to reach you?
Yeah, so I do a lot of stuff for free as well, because I know how expensive everything is raising a family, let alone with health conditions. So you can go to my website, deliciouslyallergyfree.com. There you will get all sorts of recipes and health articles on there. And I often do in a private Facebook group called Allergy and Health Support for Parents. So if you search that in a group, I will do often every Wednesday a live cooking demo of a recipe. And I do these 3 challenges, my gut health challenge and my allergy friendly cooking challenge on there. And so you can find me there. And then my course itself is called Raising Kids with Allergies. And that course teaches parents how to identify the right foods that are causing symptoms, how to eliminate them. And then the course is really 90% is all about rehabilitating the gut. And when we do all 3 of those, we can see really exciting results. So the website for that is raisingkidswithallergies.com. Thank you, Kohei, for allowing me to share that.
No, I just, had to get people onto that, because, and I'll be sharing that with a lot of my patients as well. Yeah, so definitely, visit Sharon's website, have a look through there, get in touch with her if you've got some other questions as well. I think it's a fantastic course, and it's great that you're able to offer these sort of services that a lot of practitioners can't. Us as naturopaths as well, we don't focus a lot on things like recipes and teaching people how to cook. It's more clinical situation, and so it's great for me to have referrals like yourself, where those needs can be met. It's the gaps that I have that I can't fulfill for my patients. So
Yeah.
That's great. So I've noted the website on the chat group, guys. So if you want to access that anytime. Also, this webinar is recorded. Don't worry, none of you guys are shown on the video. And I will be posting it up on my Facebook page. I'm sure Sharon will be as well on her social media. I do also have a YouTube channel, which I'll just note on there now. Yeah, so I just posted up on there. And so that's where a lot of my free seminars and webinars are going to be. So this is the first episode of the webinar series, and I'll be doing more. And next time I will be interviewing somebody who owns a health food store. So just sort of exploring some of the things that you can purchase from health food stores, and all the goodies that you have access to that you might not be able to have at a supermarket. So that'll be a fun webinar as well. So yeah, if you'd like to sort of keep updated on those things, just click onto the YouTube page, click onto the Facebook page, and subscribe, and yeah, you'll have all that information at your fingertips. So that comes to the end of the webinar. That was fantastic, and we're bang on 1 hour. I know we were supposed to go a little bit short, but you know, I would have hated to cut you off short. So
well, thank you. It's been so enjoyable, and it's been so lovely to connect with all of you guys listening as well. And you know, honor to you. You could be doing so many other things today, and it just shows how wonderful and what wonderful intentions you have joining today. So
no, I don't have kids, so I have time.
Yeah. I'm talking about your listeners, Karen.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, the listeners. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Well, yeah, again, thank you so much, and thanks to everybody that joined in. You know, and one thing I want you guys to do is just a favor from me. If you found this information useful, you know, please just share it. Talk to other people if they're having kids with allergy issues, and if you feel like this kind of service will really be helpful for them. It really is about sharing, and this is what it's all about. This free webinar series is just sharing information. So please share however way you'd like to, and let's get that information out there into our community. Okay.
Great.
All right.
Thank you. That was good.
Thank you, guys. All right. Well, you guys have a good rest of the weekend. Sharon, thank you so much again. And hopefully see you guys again for another webinar series.
Great. Always keep me posted with these, and I'll share with my community as well.
Absolutely. Thanks, Sharon.
Enjoy your day. See you guys.
Okay. See you guys later. Bye-bye.
Bye.